Welcome to the Survival Prepper Show, where being labeled a crazy prepper is a badge of honor. Learn about disaster preparedness, survival, and get ready for whatever challenges might come your way. This is not your typical prepping podcast, and they won't be silenced by the censors. Here are your hosts, Duff and Dale.
All right, let's try this again. I think we have it figured out. Everybody in the chat, if we're not echoing, let us know. If we are echoing, then, I don't know what to say from this point on. But at any rate, hey, everyone, welcome to the show again. Like we were talking about earlier tonight, we've got a few things talking about how things are going to be going here in the near future. Everybody in the chat saying sounds good, so I think we're good. But we were talking about how before we got all echoey and stupid on the last one, we were talking about how we try not to be doom and gloom, but it's really damn hard these days not to be doom and gloom. And that's kind of what this show is not necessarily doom and gloom. It's kind of a warning about what could be over the horizon, right? Oh, I think you're still muted.
Now watch all the audio go crazy.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting because years ago, right, we used to say, oh, quit being all doom and gloom, right? And people are like, no, we're not being doom and gloom. So maybe they were just a little more on the edge of like they're like, hey, this is the precipice before we are. But I don't know if I'm 100% doom and gloom, but I think I'm probably a fair amount more doom right now, or doom and gloom, than I am like, unicorn farts and stuff like that.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a few times, how when we used to do our old you used to do your podcast, I do mine occasionally, but when I was doing mine consistently, there wasn't that sense of urgency there is now. And especially with things coming up like the stuff we're going to talk about today, you've got an article on hyperinflation. We're seeing inflation right now through the roof, basically. And when does it turn into that? So we're going to go over your article. We've got, I found a couple articles from Zero Hedge, one from Zero Hedge talking about how Doomsday preppers were right. And we hear that type of sentiment over and over again, starting in 2020. So we're going to talk about how some of those things may be over the horizon. Because this show was kind of a fiasco in the beginning and we blew 20 minutes, I don't know that we'll have time to get into the binders thing, but we'll talk about that next week. But what's that? Were you going to say something?
I think we should still do it, man. Hey, congratulations, dude. That was probably the worst tech thing we've ever had. And you didn't lose your shit.
Maybe
that's pretty awesome.
Maybe it's just, I don't know. I don't know. It's just a good night. That's all.
A year and a half ago, you'd be in therapy right now.
Yeah. We'll see how much time we have, because we have to do the after show as well. And in the after show for the members of the Bug Out location, we're going to talk about some skills and practicing and all of that stuff, because with this stuff coming up, it's that stuff that's important as well. So I suppose what we'll get into first here. Let me see if I can figure out how to screen share. This is where it all goes foobar now. Figure out how I can screen share this. But this one article I was talking about from Zero Hedge that goes over how Doomsday preppers were right. And what this article basically is talking about is how in 2020 or before 2020, everybody was, doomsday preppers and preppers. I hate, the whole doomsday preppers thing, but I guess that's kind of what we are. But everybody was basically talking about how, we're off our rockers, or we're worried about this and worried about that, and nothing's going to happen. This euphoric type feeling. And then the pandemic hits, and everybody, and we've talked about this a few times, everybody starts flipping out, looking for doomsday prepper stuff, looking for prepper channels on YouTube, looking for your website, my website, all, the prepping websites. And it's kind of continued at that pace. It dropped off a little bit after the pandemic, but you've got inflation, you've got war, you got all that stuff.
I guess the thing about it in a way is that everybody has that tripwire, like that thing where all of a sudden it's like, oh, I better start getting prepared, right? So the more people that I feel start getting into preparedness because like they feel the need right now because things are going so, they don't have confidence in the way we're headed. I think shows more and more that they're seeing it too. So we have to be getting closer to something because we see the numbers rising. There was a article I talked about in my podcast over in the Epoch Times, whatever. That was where they talked to some of the top, like City Prepper and Urban Prepper, some of the top YouTube channels out there. And they all, agreed. And of course they're sort of agreeing because they're preppers, but then they showed the stats, and I think we talked about this before, on what they see the preparedness and security industries, like something like 400% increase over the next year or two. So that tells me that, everybody's seeing it. And well, why are people spending money and their resources, time, and attention on preparedness right now? Because everybody's getting nervous because I think across the board, more and more people are seeing it. And the more people that see it, to me, just validates that, hey, maybe we're not so crazy.
Yeah, it's people are seeing it. It's like a game of Jenga, and this tower is just getting built and built of all the crap that's laid upon it. You got war, you've got inflation, you've got coming up. I've got this article right here talks about the food shortages and stuff. How there's already rationing and stuff going on in some parts of Europe. I even saw that in China, because of their massive overreaction lockdown things, there's actually food riots out there. Now, I tried to find validating information on that, and all I could find was a couple of things from Twitter or Yahoo. So I don't have any actual documented proof that it is happening, but it wouldn't surprise me. But they have all the. What's that?
I saw a video that was supposedly from one of the big Chinese cities that's been locked down, and it showed people out like banging on cars and stuff because they're not getting fed.
Yeah,
they're getting, and I think we talked about that guy. He had a tweet or something up, and he hadn't been out of his house, or he's been trying for 2 days. You can't leave your house to get food, and they're supposed to deliver it to everybody. And he's been trying for 2 days to get at food. They're out of food, and they don't even get anybody to answer the phone. So, yeah, I think it paints a bleak picture,
Yeah.
And if we don't, in a way, if we think about our food situation, we have shortages. I don't know that you can call it rationing, but in a way it is, because you don't have what if we were operating at like peak efficiency, we don't have what we would normally have. The prices aren't what they normally would be. Right. So, and maybe some people say, well, this is the new normal. Well, the new normal sucks worse than the old normal did right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's an excuse, saying the new normal. That's basically accepting the problems that we have and all that. And I just don't buy that crap. In this article on Zero Hedge, they were talking about how people are just kind of, they see this stuff and they see these global leaders talking about it. And, even Biden saying there's going to be food shortages and all of these, you see all this stuff going on, but they're just not paying attention. People don't seem very alarmed. But there are some, because we see the uptick in some of the stuff that we do online. So there are some, but there are a lot of people that are just either not paying attention. They just go about their daily lives and do what they do and watch their TV shows and all that. Or they're just like, hey, this is just how it is. No need to worry about it. Everything's going to be all right. And as preppers, we don't have that luxury because we worry about everything basically.
Well, I think
or we plan for it.
And I also think that there are people that no matter how bad, I mean, go back to Independence Day, that great Will Smith movie. Go back to Independence Day and look when the alien comes, right? You have all the people on top of the building with signs like "Welcome you to Earth," and then they get blasted, right? I think you're always going to have people that right up to the end, like, nah, this isn't happening. Yeah, I think we'll talk about it in a minute, but they got the new inflation numbers come out. I think did they just come out? They come out in a couple of days. They come out right around now, I think, for reporting back on what March is. And last month was what 7%, 7.5%, something like that. Highest in 40 years since '82.
Yeah, I was just going to say, was it in double digits?
No, not yet. But then again, if you look, how do they figure that out, right? Through the consumer price index, and what do, right? They get in there and they do substitutions on products, so that way they can bring the inflation numbers down, artificially bring it down. They game the entire system. Like 7% or whatever it's at now is after they have gamed the system to the most that they can game it right now.
Yeah. The CPI is a joke,
right?
Another thing that is, a problem with all of this stuff is this article. I just thought the headline was funny. No poop for you, but manure supplies and fertilizers and stuff like that are bound to have an effect on the food supply as well. So maybe, like you were talking about, maybe we don't see the shortages here in the United States, or the rationing. I mean, we're going to see shortages, but the rationing like you would in some of these other countries. But you're probably going to see more shortages. You're probably going to see the prices of all this stuff go even higher.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all the stuff people don't think about, but it makes a difference as far as, where your chickens come from, where your hamburger comes from, all of that stuff.
Well, it's actually worked out well because I've been eating a ton of fish lately because fish hasn't really been hit. Well, the prices started to go. I just noticed they started creeping up today. And the fish that's the most expensive, it's like $17 to get like cod from Alaska or from the US. And you can buy tilapia that was farm raised in some mud pit in China, though, pretty cheap still. So
yeah.
Like look at it. I mean, come on, man. We don't even get our own fish anymore.
Yeah. One last thing on this Zero Hedge article that I wanted to show, if I can get this back up here. There we go. Also, I don't know how much of you've heard about this, but the bird flu, the stuff going around with chickens and all that. And I think about this because we have some chickens, and I think in this article, they're talking about 1.9 million turkeys and chickens are affected by this, basically dead. So, I mean, that has a potential to impact the food supply as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course it does. And I mean, at a perfect time, right? Like, okay, these could all be individually isolated, just random chance events, and maybe some of them aren't, and I don't know. But, you talk about the turkeys and the chickens with bird flu. We have bio labs in Africa as well, like 30 of them, 30 something. Have you heard this yet?
Is there somewhere we don't? I haven't.
Like
no.
Basically anything that would look bad in a freedom of information request, or that would violate our law, they just offshore it. Hey, we can do it overseas. Like, we don't allow it to be done in our country because it's so dangerous, but we'll do it in Chad. Oh man.
Yeah, we don't allow them to do it in the country because then they got to answer a bunch of questions and jump through a bunch of hoops.
Well, yeah, I mean, they might have to actually, uphold some standards, so that's something like, I don't know, COVID doesn't get released from a lab.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, Robert said in the chat, I might be selfish, but I don't care that others aren't aware enough to prep. The less folks I have to compete with for resources while they're still available. And you know what? It is true. I suppose that, when it all comes down to it, it is your, it's you against me, basically, or each man for themselves, I suppose. So, I mean, I totally get that point. At the same time, I'd like to see more people right now becoming more prepared, thinking about all of this stuff and being aware about all this stuff, because by not being aware, it's almost allowing it to happen, because most disasters you talk about are man-made. They're made by the dipshits up top.
Yeah. Well, I like the fact that more people are becoming prepared, and I hope more do, because what I'm noticing is the more and more people that become prepared, the more I'm seeing people that are willing to pull together. Like, they're like, all right, this might be crappy. And they're, you see more of that, where I think years ago in the prepper community, it was really isolationist, right? And now it's more and more people are getting on board. And I think there's a little bit more of a sense of that kind of community coming, where
Yeah.
at least at a minimum, you may be more open to, hey, can we work together a little bit, rather than being like some marauding bands of knuckleheads or whatever it is, like having, going out and trying to fight for a living every day. If something came to that, would be, nobody would last that long, really. So,
Yeah.
I like that fact. I see a more of a, I think the prepper community used to be very like very kind of, everybody was very centric to one another in the way everybody thought. And I think now it's kind of opening up a lot more, and it's fun to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot more mainstream.
And people
I guess you'd say.
What's that?
A lot more mainstream.
Yeah, yeah. And people in general, when things do go sideways, they tend to figure things out pretty quickly. The problem with that, though, is there's that initial learning curve in the beginning of stuff where we've got everything figured out, and we've seen this stuff coming. So we're going to be, I guess, less willing to be that support if it, like what Robert was saying, and like even Sage was saying in there, if our family and ourselves come first for anything else. So
Sure.
people do figure it out, but people are reactionary. So basically they wait till it happens, and then they try to figure it out when it's too late. And that's what, as preppers, we try to do, is get that heads up. So once it's too late, we're already gone, or we're already, doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
So just pretty interesting that with all this stuff that could be right around the corner, and that's not even talking about the military stuff. I don't see any of that really affecting us here at home as far as militarily, but it's all the ramifications. I still can't believe that a stupid country out in Eastern Europe has a global effect like this, or maybe it's just these yahoos pinning all the blame on.
Well, I mean,
on that,
I think
that
the other
crap.
side of it is, look, man. Well, I think the other lesson from what's going on in Ukraine is to take with people is we didn't do well in Iraq. I mean, individually, our soldiers all did great things, right? Like the military, for what it had to deal with, did they made a lot of, I guess they achieved a lot of their goals, right? And they were fucked up goals based upon the whole reason why we were there. But I think if you look at the fact that we got stopped up by an insurgency, yet again, I mean, as long as, we can say all that we want, that we win or we did that, but we left Vietnam, and maybe the reason why we leave without achieving our goals, because we have fucked up goals when we go in there. And the fact is, now you see Russia got stuffed by Afghanistan. They got stuffed now. So this big concept of these big giant armies and their fucking tank divisions and all that, it's literally, as long as they keep doing that, they're feeding the military industrial complex. Because you had the Ukrainian army, a small force, kind of scrabble a bunch of people together in a lot of ways. And hey, a lot of those guys did have past experience in Iraq and stuff, and they stopped the Russian army.
Yeah.
Right now, the Russians are regrouping, and it looks like they're going to swing around and try to secure more of that Donbass region and try to get that area where we talked about before, where they need that water for the Crimea. That they're going to try to hit down there, but they have gotten stuffed by and large. So, I think that this idea of the way the power structure of the world is really off base right now. And I think the scary part also is how they're being able to use technology. Take a drone to go take one person out, right?
Yeah.
Kind of stuff. So where does all that lead to how we interact with the world? Down the road. How does the government treat us? Because the thing that scares me the most or makes me the most nervous is the more that we get this technology that's supposed to be, you know, we think about like the internet was supposed to be so free and we could go get access to all the information in the world. Well, look where all this has gone. We're into the Patriot Act now. So the internet opened them up to get farther in our lives. And every time we make a technological advance, it just seems like we're getting more and more siloed down to some totalitarian, you know, way of being.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, where does this road go?
Yeah. And hey, real quick, for the people at Survivalist Prepper watching this video, we've had, it's been a fiasco today. So I just wanted to play this real quick.
Viewer discretion is advised.
It's been crazy. So you're just going to have to either just deal with it or whatever. A lot of this is, we're going to talk about Brian's article and it's going to be pretty smooth, but after that, it could get that way. So I just wanted to give everyone a warning.
Hey, the survivalist, I was a survivalist prepper. That's how I got into all this person,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah.
I think most people don't mind, but there are some, but I just wanted to say that. So with that, I mean, I just played that. Now we're going to get into your hyperinflation article. And I have a feeling you're going to keep this pretty clean because you're going to want to put it on your website and stuff. So
Hey, I'm actually trying to work on my mouth some more, but that is like a bridge kind of too far, man.
yeah,
I can see.
Well,
the
and
bridge, but it just, you know, I try to work on it. I try to hold it, but
well, it's hard because, and we've talked about it a bunch of times in the show, we get passionate about this stuff when we talk about some of the stuff that really does get you heated. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it kind of is what it is, but with that though, what you were talking about with the drones and all that, we do have a segment that I'm going to try to get to at the end here, going over some military technology and all that stuff and some different things that they can do. Different things that are cool for them, different things that to me seem like more like crowd control than military technology. But that should be pretty fun. With that, though, I wanted to pull up your article here. I wanted to talk about this. You have 7 tips to prepare for hyperinflation. And this article actually goes through quite a few things as far as what to do with hyperinflation. I guess start this off. I know you have it in here after the challenges of preparing for hyperinflation, but what is the difference between inflation and hyperinflation?
So inflation is like the typical, like, you know, devaluation and increase in value, the fluctuations in the dollar and the currency, right? That's supposed to be what the typical thing. Sometimes you have deflation, sometimes you have inflation, right? And it's usually, everybody knows it's around 2 to 3%. And it kind of supposed to go up and down if they're balancing everything out, right? Well, that would take into account, you know, them actually trying to do that well. But anyhow, then hyperinflation is where you might see a 50%, like a doubling overnight or within a few days, where the economy just kind of like what you saw in Venezuela, the economy just takes off and or goes down the tubes, not takes off. So that's the difference between the two. And right now, we're still in inflation, but it's like, you know, we're at 7% inflation right now. So at some point, if that keeps speeding up, we may very well be in hyperinflation. And the fact that we're already going down that road, the fact that we're at 7% means, okay, well, we're that much closer to it being 50%. So it's an increased likelihood that could happen. So it's something to start thinking about.
Yeah. I tried to make that full screen so people could read it better, but it's almost the same damn size. So that was a failure, but yeah, to me, it seems like hyperinflation is just like, you know, you've got a couple holes in the dam and that's basically inflation. And, you know, it's kind of doable. It's not, you know, life threatening, or it's not, you know, threatening the things that you can do, not life threatening, but threatening your livelihood and all that stuff. Whereas hyperinflation is just completely out of control, right? Yeah, I think of the Weimar Republic in Germany with wheelbarrows of cash and stuff like that with hyperinflation.
Well,
Venezuela.
And I think too, the reason to be aware of the two is to, again, understand that, like, all right, normally inflation is like 2 to 3%. And we're at like 7%. So that means we've more than doubled what we normally run at. So we already have a head of steam. And unless they do, and if the world wasn't a complete train wreck right now with everything that's happening in it, I would say that, okay, well, maybe in their balancing act of how they try to balance the economy out. And, we can think what we want about the way currency works. Maybe they'd have a better shot at doing it. But right now there's so much going on, and they're have so many games between this embargo and that embargo. And, they're doing all these different financial games and oil things, it's just kind of craziness going right now. So it's chaotic enough where when I look at it and we're at 7%, I'm like, well, it doesn't seem like anybody has gotten this somewhat under control at all. Right. And trying to make it work within their system. So to me, that means like, okay, well, we may see this continue to go up. And so what does that mean as preppers? That means for everybody out in the preparedness world that everything that we may try to buy tomorrow or 2 months down the road may be astronomically beyond our ability to get it. If you look at the Venezuela thing, $10 plus $20 I've heard for a loaf of bread kind of stuff. So all the preparedness you can do now sets you up to be able to weather that storm better. I mean, hopefully that things don't keep going off the cliff and they just turns into some sort of apocalyptic economic scenario, and that we get things back or they figure it out somehow. But everything you can do to get ahead of those hard times, think about the Great Depression. What can you do now in case that happens again or worse?
Yeah. You kind of went through it, but do you want to go through a little bit about what causes hyperinflation? And with that, I mean, basically the Fed and all the dickheads on top cause it. But what are the factors that take inflation and turn it into hyperinflation?
I tend to look at it, I guess, probably like a simpleton when it comes to it. I look at inflation and hyperinflation as inefficiency of leadership, people that are in charge of doing what they need to do to make sure that, because everybody knows that the way the cash system works, it's a fiat currency, and they dial it up and they can dial it up and dial it down based upon things, right? Situations. So what it tells me is they are either failing at their jobs right now and have been for a while, or they're intentionally doing this for ulterior motives. Either way, it has the same result for all of us. Until something's done to get a stable economy going, we're all going to be dipping in deeper into our pockets. And that inflation thing you mentioned in the, before this about the fertilizer. Well, it's just not the fertilizer. It's the fuel prices are going up, right? Mm-hmm. Everything across the board is going up. You go walk through the supermarket, you see it. Well, that's all the transportation costs, the labor costs, everything's going into that. And so I don't see them right now reining that in. I mean, what are they going to do to rein that in? You have the instability in Ukraine. You got China's going through a problem right now. So I don't know. I think if you're going to prepare and worry about a financial collapse, this is the time to be getting into it and the time to be trying to do what you can to get ahead of it.
Yeah. All right. So I just turned this off. I should have just left the damn thing on. But you've got a few steps here. And we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but prepare for hyperinflation by stocking up on necessities. This is something we've talked about. I've talked about my food storage, and I basically about a month ago freaked out and bought a freezer, got a whole bunch of meat, all that stuff that I see as becoming just really expensive in the coming months, and trying to keep that stocked up. Necessities are more than just the food and stuff, right? You've got other stuff in this article.
Yeah, and I think before we get into this, understand that, hey, we are not giving out any financial advice here, because I think that's what you have to say on YouTube, right? I have an online MBA, and we're two meatheads. That's about the extent of it. So this is all our opinion. But yeah, you have to prepare for hyperinflation, I think, by stocking up as much as possible. Don't go into debt over it. On the necessities that you can see needing down the road. So look at what you spend in a year. Is there certain things you go through in a year? How many tubes of toothpaste, whatever. And just like we talk about, scaling up your food stores, scale up everything on that level. A few extra tubes of toothpaste or the ingredients to make, powder, toothbrushing powder kind of stuff, understanding how to do that, or getting some of that, figuring that kind of stuff out so that you're ahead of the game. If this stuff keeps going up, right? If the cost of everything keeps going up, if we see more shortages, and if you're ahead of the game and everything gets back to normal, okay, well, now you have extra stuff. You don't need to spend you don't need to spend stuff for a little while. You can save up again and get you ahead of the game. And the other thing right now too is when you get into financial instability, if we look at like the Great Depression, what happened? A lot of people lost their jobs. So stocking up now if you end up one of the people, if that comes to pass, you might be ahead of the game and you have something stocked up to be able to survive on until you figure it out.
Yeah. Hey, for some reason, when I screen share, our video resolution goes way low. So I'm going to stop sharing your article. Okay. I think maybe from now on, I'll start making slides and putting them in here. But we're going to continue on your article. It just seems like it drops the resolution, but so you talked about this: canned foods, dry goods, family clothing, hygiene products, prescription medications, all of that different stuff. And we had the link in the old show. So if you go back to the show that just went absolutely FUBAR, it's got all the links in that, or come back to this later on and I'll make sure and update the description and all of that, or go to Mine for Survival and you'll be able to find it there. But two, and I think this is where you talked about this is not financial advice, or this is why you said that, is keep your money in a safe place. And you're basically that safe place would be not in the bank, but also.
I think you should, I think people should diversify, especially now. We don't know what's happening, right? Who knows the way this goes? Like, I think if there's one thing that we can bank on the future right now, other than like, hey, it may be getting worse, is that it's predictably unpredictable, right? So I think if you, talk to financial people, like a level-headed guy's Dave Ramsey, right? Like he usually gives some fairly sound stuff, and there's Susie Orman, there's other people. Go listen to people who have a track record for helping people make good decisions. I mean, Dave Ramsey gets people out at, just crazy mountains of debt. So, go listen to what those people have to say and do some due diligence on your own and figure out what works best for you, but make sure you're put in someplace that you feel will be safe and secure moving forward. Because, if you keep it all in a bank and there's runs on the banks, that's bad. If you put it all in your mattress and your house catches on fire, that's bad. So you got to figure out what will work best for you, but do your best and understand where it is. So that way, if stuff starts happening, you can flex to meet other options. Maybe, you have a backup plan. Yeah.
Well, that too. And if we're talking about how things could get really bad in this show, and I don't know that, it would go to Mad Max type stuff, but if we are seeing food shortages and we're seeing, those riots and the stuff going on because people can't get food, you've got to make sure your home security and all that stuff is taken care of. And it's very possible that, people could end up at your front door. So you got to think about stuff like that. Although it may be sort of unlikely, I suppose, it's not out of the question. And it's something we should always think about.
And you're right. And I think the scary, the part that should make people the most nervous about it is the minute people can't feed their kids. And that's, like we talked about a little bit ago about how some people won't ever prepare. The minute they can't feed their kids, and, the people who are really just have no values at all, the minute they can't feed their kids or maybe themselves, then they're going to go do something to find food.
Yeah.
And once all the dumpsters have been gone through and everything's at some point, the best option in their mind becomes people who are in their houses or in their apartments and may have food. That becomes the best option.
Yeah. So. You also have on here barter items, and this is something that I think could turn. I mean, we talk about it all the time. How useful is this going to be? And storing stuff like that when you should be paying attention to storing stuff that's going to help you out. But honestly, if it gets to the point where things are super expensive. I think about my chickens here and how in the summertime with just me and Lisa here, it's way too many eggs than we need. But in a situation like that, it wouldn't be enough. So, and we could barter something like that with the neighbors. People, because maybe they don't want to have to go spend $15 on a carton of eggs. And when we can give it and get something back for it that way. So I'm not talking like full scale bartering, like there's little SHTF shops. And that wasn't a plug. That was just lucky. But
maybe that becomes the thing, right? Because if money becomes worthless, well, what do you have that's worth something? All the stuff that you wanted to buy with that worthless money. Well, if you want it, there's someone else wants it. Maybe that's what ends up happening where, you have people that start making clothes or doing things like that. And that becomes the trade. I don't think if currency gets so badly devalued, I think that's an obvious way that society is going to turn.
Yeah. You think about the Great Depression and the things that those people had to do just to get by day to day. And it was, bartering your physical abilities and stuff like that, doing, whatever work you could do. So there's just a lot of things that I don't know that it gets that bad. I hope it doesn't get that bad, but the potential is there.
Well,
for
it's
those
kind of
shortages.
interesting now too, right? It gets back to that thing because, and I'm totally guilty of it. Like having scoffed for years, I always kind of laughed at the people who would talk about bartering. Like, oh, I got to have my supplies for bartering. Now, I think the first thing you should stock up on is things that you need. And the more and more I look at it, knowing that, well, maybe there's something in the doom and gloom of the apocalypse or, just a society on the skids that you never foresaw you needed. So maybe those barter items offer the flexibility when it comes to preparedness that should hyperinflation happen to the point where we're operating on a barter system that you have some ability to flex and get some things you need.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where that the booze kind of thing is. But I think too, if we go to a barter society, you'll have so many people making bathtub gin and stuff that, we'll see how the booze thing goes.
Yeah. All right. Next, you have what to do with your money to protect against hyperinflation. And you've got basically two things: increase your income, easier said than done, and decrease your debt, which is also something that's easier said than done, especially when you're talking about how your money is worth less than it was a year ago. But it may be that increasing your income, getting a second job, doing stuff like that, may be something that is unavoidable. I mean, we don't want to do it, but it may be something that you have to do.
Yeah. And, think about places where you could go get a job right now that might be good is, one, stores that offer discounts for like good employee discounts. I remember my sister, when she had first moved into like her apartment or where the heck she was living in, she went and got a job at one of these kind of fancy furniture stores because they gave their employees like a 50% discount or something. So she worked there for a couple of years until she could afford to furnish her house, and it was pretty smart, her apartment. So I think you could look at that like, I don't know, maybe Cabela's gives people a discount, or Home Depot or Lowe's gives their employees discounts. Right now, that kind of stuff is, being able to get lumber or building materials if you're trying to stock up ahead of time on some of that, or sporting good items, take a look at some of that, and then you get cash on top of it, right? You get paid for that. So if you have the opportunity, I think there's some ways to look at it really help out your preparedness and get you ahead of the game maybe a little bit in case the economy does go south.
Yeah. And there's probably, I know for me, there probably is, but for most people, I think there's a lot of ways to decrease how much you spend on a monthly basis. There's a lot of things that are not necessities, basically, that we kind of, that we could kind of tighten the belt. And again, maybe we don't want to, but it may turn into that situation
so what could you tighten the belt on?
Oh, there's a couple of streaming services that are, I've already got 150 channels. Why do I need 40 more? Some things like that. There's some things, and we've talked about this before, that we pay for to put this show out.
Yeah.
That we could do the show without them, but it wouldn't be as cool, and we wouldn't be able to do the things that we want to do. So there are some things. The SHTF shop. But there are some things that we could do. I'm not going to get myself in trouble here with talking about our animals and stuff like that. But
I always love asking you these questions because I know Lisa's watching. So
yeah,
I kind of do it intentionally, hoping you trip up.
I will tell you what, and I'm going to leave it at this: those horses are expensive. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Oh, well, yeah.
So if it comes down to it, where a loaf of bread is $15, or a bale of hay is $75.
Well, let me ask you this: they probably would operate a lot with the way gas prices are going. I bet the horses might be a more inexpensive version to get yourself around.
Yeah. Could you see Lisa pulling up at her work on a horse in her nurse's outfit?
Oh, I can totally see that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. All right, number 4 here. You've got quite a bit on here. I'm going to skip the food part of it because we kind of talked about that. But I do want to move on because we're kind of short today. But you have invest in commodities such as fuel, precious metals, lumber, and cryptocurrency. I'm curious why you have lumber on there, and we can go into the other ones too. But what was your thoughts with lumber?
Well, I look at it as if you plan on doing anything, any home improvements around your house, right, or whatever you may have to do when the economy goes south. I remember my grandfather and my grandmother. They moved from New York to California, and when they got out here, they were so poor they didn't have a place to live, and they got a spot in a trailer park. And my grandfather built a trailer from the ground up. So I figure and that was what they used to do back then, right? So I kind of figure if we're gonna go into hard times, well, you're gonna probably want or need construction stuff or family or friends. Again, barter items, right? So when the pandemic hit and all the price of lumber and everything went through the roof, well, that price is still inflated, right? And I don't see the cost of those goods coming down anytime soon. I see them going up more possibly. So if you know you're going to be building a project and you think inflation is going to keep going up, the 2x4 you buy today will be worth more tomorrow with the way the economy goes. And you have the ability to be more resilient by being able to build. It's just like with all that stuff, whether it's the crypto, the gold, whatever, you're just trying to hedge against the future. Again, you look at your own situation. See, if you live in an apartment in the city, you probably don't want a stack of lumber. But maybe you get some gold or crypto or, get more food. Everything becomes an asset in a barter economy.
Yeah, if you live in an apartment in the city and you got a stack of lumber, you're not going to have it very long because there's people that steal copper pipes and all sorts of crap. They'll tear your apartment apart just to get the pipes out of the wall. So if you got a stack of lumber sitting out there, you better be sitting on top of it with a shotgun.
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, very true. And cryptocurrency, all that stuff. Basically, if your money's in the bank, who the hell knows? And that's kind of my philosophy on this whole thing. Is where does all this stuff lead, and what happens? You've got cyber attacks that are an issue. You've got just the inflation in general. So the value of a dollar when you put it in savings decreases. I don't care what the interest rate of your savings account is, it's going to decrease. It's not, your interest rate isn't more than the inflation rate. So getting crypto and doing stuff like that to kind of hedge against that stuff is a good idea.
And I think looking at these different things and vehicles and ways to, try to hedge against some of this hyperinflation or inflation going on. At a minimum, if you go get educated on it, if you don't know about cryptocurrency now, if you don't know about everything, go get educated on it. So that way you can see possible options coming up down the road if we keep going farther down this path.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So Amy said, at the very least, get a good stock of plywood. And this is a very good point. Mm-hmm. Boarding up windows and stuff like that. That wood and that stuff that you buy, it may not be that you can sell it later, or you may not want to sell it later at a higher price or whatever. But it could be that stuff that would be useful for just doing stuff around the house. If you had to build something, chicken coops or anything like that for animals and all that stuff, you just never know. Boarding up the windows and preparing for those people to, the food riots and all that stuff. Absolutely.
Well, and I think that's the key too. We mentioned about living in an apartment. Well, if you're in an apartment, I would focus on how can you secure, entry into your apartment, and then also trying to get as much food as you can stocked up in there, because when the cities go south again, if we're talking about food instability, just the average person who has been working hard their whole life can't get food for their kids, I think that's when things turn south. So not interacting with people for a little while until the situation hopefully settles down is probably the safest and best course of action that you can have if you don't have any ability to leave or whatever, if you have to stay put.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so I want to move on, and like I said, I will update the links to this video after we get done here, and since the first one just went to crap on us, but you can always go to mineforsurvival.com and check out the article there. I believe it's one of your more recent ones, right? So it's probably still on the front page, the homepage.
Yeah, if not, just go to mineforsurvival.com/how to prepare for hyperinflation.
Okay. But I want to move. I am going to skip my binders article because I'm going to make some slides for it rather than screen sharing. I'm not sure if it's messing it up or what. I'll find out when I watch this video later, but I do want to make some slides for that. And I want to talk about some of this military stuff before we get out of here, because I already do have slides made up for this. But a while back we were talking about, and I don't know, a week or two ago, you were talking about all this crap what they're doing with drones and things that are possible. You even alluded to it in the beginning of the show, the things that are possible. And when we were talking about this, it made me think, have you ever watched the show The Colony with the aliens?
Right.
I've got this clip right here. I'm going to play this. This is what I thought about when we had that conversation. I don't know that that's all that far-fetched. Maybe the aliens part of it.
Up until like now, where we have the technology to start, where that kind of thing may not be that far down the road, 10 years down the road, right? 20 years down the road, whatever that time frame is. That up till now, the biggest hurdle with a total totalitarian government or dictatorship kind of thing getting in there is the people. Like, there's just too many people for what if they all decide to go in one direction, there's nothing. Look around the world when they've had revolutions that have happened. It's that's the way it happens. So that changes the game though with the technology, because now you can literally have and figure out and find a way with these little drones they're using and stuff to justify, to say, okay, well, no, we're doing this to help to protect you. We need this extra technology, right? And the more I look at it, we're literally creating, Skynet in a way, except maybe Skynet isn't controlled by the AI. Maybe Skynet's controlled by the people who control it and use it to, if they want to try to suppress a population. I don't think it's, if we look at all the conspiracy theories that used to be conspiracy theories have been proven true, where the government has just crapped on the rights of people. I mean, MK Ultra, all up and down the line. Well, I don't think it's that far-fetched to go, well, would they be capable of going even farther? I don't know. I went down the path. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it starts out, and the 202 said China's using drones openly in Shanghai. It starts out with, UPS or whoever dropping packages off at your front door using drones, and all of a sudden it's just innocent at first, and then all of a sudden they can figure out how to use them for everything, and then pretty soon they can rail against the police all they want because they don't need actual physical human beings to be the police. They have these, so I could just completely see it go in that direction. There's a lot of great uses for drones, especially when when you talk about military stuff and all that, like we're going to talk about. But there's also, just like everything, that potential to be that kind of way to separate themselves from the human factor and their ability to do things that they don't have to feel guilty about, or a person isn't behind the gun or something like that. You know what I mean? Robotics and AI.
I mean, our government flies drones overseas and drops missiles on people, right? So I don't know. I don't think the technology, unless we can figure some way to where everybody gets on board with let's use this responsibly to increase the human race rather than to, suppress it, to control it. I don't know where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I want to get into a couple of these from this article I found. And again, the link was in the other show notes and they're not in this one. But it was like 50 different things in that article. And that's why I decided to make slides up because I just wanted to grab some of the ones that caught my attention. But there was a whole lot of them in there. I don't know if you've heard about this one. This is the Magneto Hydrodynamic Explosive. And basically it's a flux generator. I don't even know what a magnetic flux generator is, but I guess it just creates energy. So it doesn't need an explosion, basically.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, it's great technology, I guess. I just, I don't think
and I know that
anything good.
Yeah, I know that like rocket scientists, NASA, and all that are trying to figure out how to use plasma technology for propulsion because it's more efficient and you can get up to higher speeds and all that. I don't think this is exactly what that is. This to me seems something more that just doesn't use the typical combustion to propel for velocity and all that. But look pretty interesting.
No, the military comes up with some great stuff, man. I mean, they Velcro. I mean, they've come up with all kinds of great technology. It's just what are we using it for? There's a lot of.
Yeah, we did when we first started. We did a show on DARPA projects. Maybe we'll have to do another one of those. That was a fun show. Very cool. Check out just type in DARPA on our YouTube channel. You can watch that. The next one I've got here is this one. To me, looks like pure crowd control. I don't see an application in the field unless you're talking about maybe protecting a forward operation base or something like that. But this to me looks like something that if there's ever another January 6th, watch out for stuff like this. Basically, it's a taser fence.
Looks like you give old Sparky a run for its money.
Yeah. It's and for anybody listening to this on the podcast, it's basically a bunch of tasers, basically like a claymore, right? Except for this is probably 5 feet wide and it's got like 50 tasers on it. Where if you're in front of that sucker,
each of the tasers is like a little block on there, and there's a lot of them. It looks like it would be. I guess it shoots all the darts just straight out with a bunch of electrodes and. It kind of is like a taser claymore.
Yeah, it says a 20-degree arc and a 25-foot range. So a lot more intimidating, I suppose, than a police shield would be. So but militarily, though, what kind of application could you see this be? Would it be just for defensive stuff, out in front of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a static thing or, I guess you could put on vehicles if they're worried about having a riot surround the vehicles or something like that. I think it'd be interesting to use something like that as a security feature, in an area like if you don't shut off if you don't turn it off and someone walks in that area, they get blasted by like 10,000 tasers. Yeah.
This is a non-lethal option, so that's why I said I don't see this as a military thing so much as I see it as a crowd control type thing. So
keep people
pretty interesting though. It would be interesting, like Amy just said, it would be interesting to see it in action.
Yeah.
See how effective it was. All right. So the next one I've got here, if this is going to change, I don't know if it's going to change on me. Go figure. Oh, here we go.
Oh, there it is.
It's spinning anyway. The thunder generator. And this is another one I think of maybe as crowd control. And I could see something like this in the military if they are trying to control a certain area, people going all crazy, riots and stuff like that. But again, this is another one that I see more of a crowd control type thing. And it says here, this machine was designed to detonate an explosion in its barrel, then release with a high-speed shock wave that can be used to deafen temporarily and push back people up to 100 feet away. So just a noise cannon, basically, right? Or I guess
I think it's the actual force of the explosion. It's like a giant gun with with a bullet in it without the round in the end, or with a casing in there. It doesn't have a bullet in it. It's just a powder detonation, and it's shooting the explosive force down the barrel.
Yeah. So instead of shooting you with the piece of lead,
that would wreck you, man.
yeah, yeah. Instead of shooting you with a piece of lead and putting a hole in you.
Yeah.
That's some like Avengers type stuff right there. Some superpowers and all that stuff. All right. So that one's pretty interesting. The next one, and this one you've seen in the news quite a bit lately. People like talking about China and us and all that stuff, but hypersonic missiles. These are basically, like it says here, they go Mach 6. And I was going to research these, and maybe we'll talk about this on one of the future Blabbercasts, though. But how much do you know about the hypersonic missiles, and how valid are they at this point, or is it still something they're researching?
No, China. Well, I mean, China and Russia have them, so.
So we say
we don't. I don't know. I think we play. If you look back to like the history of the stealth program and the SR-71 and stuff, we play a pretty good, when they really want to keep an aircraft or something secret, they do a pretty good job of it. So maybe we don't. I don't know. Again, we're still trying to figure out who has the Tic Tac ship, right? But regardless, China and Russia do, and you have a missile that moves at 4,000 miles per hour. We don't really have a whole lot to deal with that, and so you're talking about real quick deployments it would take for their missiles to reach whatever's within their range. So, the United States or wherever. I think that's kind of what the other side is becoming a bit crazy. Before, you didn't have the ICBMs were nuclear capable because it wasn't really worth building a giant missile to just drop conventional bombs somewhere with all that went into it. The more and more they come up with missiles like these hypersonic missiles, the easier it is for them to kind of hit each other with conventional munitions. And they're having to redo all their defensive features and stuff now because all of a sudden everything just sped up like crazy.
Yeah. And I think the big thing with these is that they're so fast that the missile detection systems can't keep up with them, basically. And I think that's the issue that at least we're told about anyway. Who knows what? I guarantee you, if that is that big of an issue, the military's working on it.
Yeah.
They're figuring it out. So all right, so the next one we've got here, and this one's we've talked about before, but this is kind of cool, and this is one I could see being used and useful in a civilian aspect, and this is the human universal load carrier, and basically it's an exoskeleton that I think for different jobs. I mean, if you're working construction, stuff like that, especially in the military, I'm not sure. I've never been in the military, but they pack you down with as much as basically they can, right?
Sure. Well, and I think part of the problem would be the military. Well, they've gotten better at, but the military was always pretty good at, if you found a way to be able to carry more weight, they'd add the weight to make it still suck as much. But I think I think the exoskeletons. If you look at like anything like the futuristic stuff, right? Like Warhammer 40K kind of stuff where you have Terminators and that's what they're all based upon. Like you have this strong exoskeleton and this person that, I mean, nowadays we're kind of genetically enhancing people. So, I mean, again, we talked about the whole Terminator thing, right? We're heading down that pathway, but I think it's great, right? If you're a construction guy, it saves your joints. I mean, how many old farts are out there with getting knee replacements and everything else? Well, maybe this would solve that problem and give people better lives.
Yeah. Some people with their bug out bags, they're going to need an exoskeleton with the amount of weight they have in their bug out bags. You know what this makes me think of is that movie with Matt Damon. I think it was called Elysium, where all the rich people live up in the nice little ship and then all the poor people are down on Earth. But he ends up getting himself one of them little suits and becomes a badass. So, all right. So that one's pretty cool. The next one kind of along the same lines where I can see this being super helpful in the military, but also something that could find its way to some extent anyway to the civilian market. And these are the Hololens for soldiers. And I guess Microsoft makes these and it basically gives the soldiers and all that the ability to maybe see through smoke, the ability to see around corners and stuff like that. if would this be something that you'd be stoked for if say you were in the military now? Because I'm sure back when you were there,
anything that gives you the ability to see, you know, it gives you a tactical advantage. It's huge. It's why one of our big things, you know, or the United States big things with the military was go fight at night, because we had great night vision, other people didn't. So some of the crazy stuff that they're doing now, like they're talking about being able to put up, and they do, right? They put up multiple drones over a battle space now, and the drones are carrying comm links and all this stuff. So everybody because that's always one of the things, right? You can't get communications. Now they have communications with everybody. They have eyes in the sky all over the place. And the more that they come out with this stuff, the more that the individual soldier will have be able to see 360 degrees on a battlefield. In other words, like he's behind a hill or a tree, can see what's on the other side of the tree without having to look out because you have drones.
Yeah. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So their personal safety as well. Yeah. Anything that can help them.
You know, you hear about like the 50 cal that has the guided bullet, right? That they came out with it. So the more you have drones, the more it gets down to like these individual precision weapons, where I think you may even get to the point where you start, you know, you see like the use of something like the battle rifles we have now kind of going away, because it ends up being like a little individual tiny like missile launchers that you could come up with, because that's where I think that's where we're going to be going. I mean, I think the evolution that we're going to see in the next 20 something years, 30 years is going to be just incredible.
Yeah. Miss Ring the River said, it looks like a good way to get shot from the side. It kind of does, actually. And I don't know what the view from the inside is, or, you know, what kind of sensors or anything they have, or maybe there's specific reasons why they would use them. But yeah, it does kind of look like your peripheral vision would be kind of hosed wearing those.
I kind of look at it as I think that's would probably be a big thing. Like if peripheral vision if you didn't have peripheral vision out of it, it would probably be an issue. So I imagine they put something in there, or maybe this is like the Gen 1 and they plan on putting other cameras around it or something like that. Yeah.
It's hard to tell unless you're like inside those.
It looks claustrophobic though, man.
You are?
That whole mass thing. I think like I'd suffocate in that thing.
Yeah, it'd definitely be something you had to get used to. Yeah. All right, this one I think, and they say it in here too, it looks like an alien gun, but this is another one I see as crowd control. It says this crazy looking weapon appears like alien technology or something out of science fiction, but it's actually non-lethal incapacitation device designed to temporarily blind and disorient targets. And it's called the phaser rifle. And it shoots low intensity laser beams at people. So, I mean, could you imagine the cops, you know, trying to bust up a riot? They got these suckers out there. They've got those taser walls. I mean, we got no shot. No more protesting in the United States.
Well, and just wait till they put them. They put them in, you know, a remote controlled turret and stuff like that, to where it's a guy just sitting there looking at his joystick and a little screen and aiming it. I mean.
Yeah, inside his nice armored vehicle and all that stuff.
Even if he's in the armored vehicle, maybe he's back at police headquarters, and they got 10 of them on top of that thing. I mean, who knows where we're going?
And these things look so menacing that even though they're a laser, they shoot laser beams. Like think of Austin Powers now, but
I wonder how
people would see those.
I wonder how much of it is because they were calling it the phaser, like they made the outer skin on it look like some sort of alien kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
you see some cops walking down the street with one of those, you're thinking like death ray.
Yeah.
So pretty menacing looking, pretty interesting though. It'd be kind of cool to have one of those just because they look cool. Kind of like the guns we used to play with as kids. All right. This one is, speaking of guns that I want to play with, this one right here is a Force Tech shotgun, 12 shotgun. And basically it's not fully automatic, but it's capable of firing 30 rounds in under 8 seconds. It says here, this would be pretty cool. And it's got the silencer. That bottom picture there is a shotgun with a silencer. I mean, that's some heavy duty firepower.
Oh yeah. Shotguns are underrated, man. I think a lot of people think of shotguns as like the pump shotgun and stuff like that. But if you get in, I think, what did I pick up? They're called Stogers. My buddy Ed Clark, remember Ed, turned me on to them. And they're Turkish, but they're made, my understanding is they're made with Benelli guts. So, but and it's like a 9-round magazine. But shotguns are great because you get slugs. You can disable an engine block easily, with a slug, right? And then and they're great for dealing with people. So I think they're highly underrated. And if you have something like that, that's not good.
Yeah,
not good for the person on the other side. It's good for the prepper holding it.
Yeah, I imagine that would hurt your shoulder like hell after, a couple magazines.
Not as much as the person that you just blasted.
Yeah. It sure would be fun as hell to empty a magazine with one of those, though. That would be fun. All right, and then this last one here I just want to put in and get your thoughts on it. I think it's kind of cool, but I'm going to get your thoughts on it because you've talked about how the biometric guns just the technology is not there for those to be effective. But this is a little bit different. This is the Armatix Smart Pistol, which basically you have to be wearing the watch for this pistol to work. I think that, to me, it seems like that's probably better technology, more reliable than the other way. But I can already tell from the look on your face, you're like, just give me my damn gun.
Dude, I don't want to have any sort of technology that anybody can get into that prevents me from shooting my gun. Now, if you're somebody that feels that like that's in the best interest of your safety and it makes you feel better at night, and that's as close down the road of getting a gun that you can get, well, hey, that's an option that's better than nothing. But yeah, I don't want to have any sort of technology that prevents me from pulling a trigger if I need to.
Yeah. I could sort of see something like this being used for police officers. Say one of the bad guys gets their guns. I don't think that's as big of an issue in the military because I just think in the military they're more trained for that type of conflict, I guess.
Yeah, I just, again, anything that gets in between a person, even and their ability to defend themselves and get to their pistol. It's like there was a holster out years ago, and I'm not 100% sure on the name, so I'm not going to say the one that's in my head. But that it had a button release, right? You had to press the button to pull your pistol out. Once in every great while, that button would have a malfunction, and once that button had the malfunction, you couldn't get your pistol out of there. So, like, that's not a good option. I think that's the same thing on this. Until they were to prove that was infallible, nah. That's a dead man switch that you don't control on your own firearm, and it's just the way Murphy works, right? When the time you need it, and time like, yeah, my watch battery's dead or whatever it is. So nah, but you're welcome to it, man. I think you should get 2 of them.
Well, it's kind of like Kevin said in the chat. When the cops start using them, I'll look into them. Yeah, I can get that when they actually become. I mean. No, I'm going to take, just like Miss Reading the River said, I'll just take my good old fashioned firearm that, the simpler, the better. You get all these newfangled tools. Same thing goes with all these prepping gadgets and stuff. You get all these newfangled tools and knives and all this stuff that can do 15 different things. Nothing beats a good old fashioned knife, which is just a blade and a handle. So kind of that same type of philosophy. So, at any rate, just a lot of interesting stuff. I thought it was pretty neat. The whole article had a whole lot more stuff in there about the self-guiding bullets that will help increase the accuracy for the person shooting it. They have the guns that can shoot around corners and stuff like that. Like I said, I'll put the links in the show notes for anybody listening to this podcast. And then for the video, I'll get all of this updated later since this was round 2. But with that, I think we got to get out of here so we can do that after show with the bug out location. We're going to be talking about some skills and practice and stuff like that, why that stuff is so important, and some of the stuff that we can be doing now to kind of plan for the future. But I'm glad this worked. I'm glad we actually got a full hour in.
Yeah, it worked out well, man.
And
rally. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for sticking around and jumping back in once we got the technology overcome a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, everyone. I didn't jump off a roof or anything, so we're all good. So, but with that, everyone, I appreciate y'all joining in. Like Brian said, thank you for sticking around and dealing with us and listening to the echo crap and all that stuff. And I appreciate it. Eventually, we're going to get all this stuff figured out. We've almost got it, I think. So,
we're close.
So we'll see. But with that, everyone, take care and prepare, and we'll talk to you all later.
Bye, y'all.